Hey everybody, have to give me a second here. This my light source. Okay, so I'm doing this video because I cannot sleep, and I'm watching this election results, and I am very disturbed by what I see. You guys might remember. I doubt anyone remembers, but back in 2016, I did a similar video because I was very very upset by the loss of Hillary Clinton, and it seems to me like we might be seeing a repeat of that event. But even if Joe Biden wins, I have a deep concerns about the future of this country and the future of humanity because, sort of like I said in 2016, I was really shocked by all the terrible things that we knew about Donald Trump, and that didn't bother anybody. Nobody seemed to care that he admitted to sexually assaulting women. Nobody seemed to care, or not enough people, I should say, seemed to care that he lied so frequently, that he cheated people out of their money, that he created a fake university and cheated people um, out of that. There are so many things that we knew was terrible about Trump, and yet people voted for him. And now we've had 4 years to just see just how awful of a human being he is. I mean, cheating on his wife with a porn star, bribing a porn star, not paying taxes for 10 years, locking kids in cages. 500 children were separated from their families. So many things we didn't know in 2016 that we now know. The whole collusion thing with Russia, the fact that he was involved in with Putin was putting sort of hits out on American soldiers, and he didn't seem to respond to that. The fact that he called American soldiers losers for dying in battle, the fact that he called John McCain a loser for getting captured. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Um, the fact that more, probably more than anything, is that 220,000 people have died due to his mismanagement and his just complete apathy over the coronavirus. And you can tell he just doesn't care. He just doesn't care, you know. But the thing is, I'm not really angry with him because I know that there's a lot of terrible people in the world. He's just one of them. What really breaks my heart is knowing how many people are out there who are voting for Donald Trump. They know the stuff and they just don't care. They don't care. My brother is a Trump supporter. He's the only one of my family is a Trump supporter. And when you ask him about it, he goes, "Well, I made a lot of money under Trump, so that's it. I don't care." He doesn't care that kids are separated from their parents. He doesn't care that Trump has fascistic tendencies. He doesn't care that Trump is a liar. He doesn't care that Trump has tried to stop people from voting. None of this matters. He doesn't care that 220,000 Americans died. And people say, "Well, it's a virus. Trump has nothing to do with it." But we know that Trump has a lot to do with it because he goes to all these rallies without wearing a mask, without requiring people to wear a mask. And a lot of people who went to the rallies have died, and he doesn't show any concern for these people, for their safety. He makes fun of people for wearing masks. He encourages his followers not to wear masks, not to take the virus seriously. And in the places where he has the biggest followers, you have the largest, um, uh, numbers of coronavirus. If he would have acted a few weeks sooner, if he would have taken the threat more seriously, he probably could have saved tens of thousands, not 100,000 people's lives. So, in my view, Trump is guilty of manslaughter times at least 100,000. At least 100,000 cases of manslaughter can be attributed to Trump. And so, looking at the election results and seeing how close this race is, it boggles my mind completely. And it sort of makes me realize certain things that's very, very sad about humanity in general. And number one, it seems to me that people cannot be convinced of things, period. Like, you just cannot convince. If someone's a Trump supporter, they're a Trump supporter. If someone's a Biden supporter, they're a Biden supporter. And you cannot, we've gotten to the point where people cannot be swayed by evidence. People cannot be swayed by argument. Texas is a red state, California is a blue state, and then there's swing states. But the people in those swing states who are Trump supporters, it literally does not matter what Trump says or does. Which basically means that all of this rallying, all of this speeches that people give, all these debates, they're irrelevant. It seems to me that Trump could have got on the stage when he debated Joe Biden, and he could have just drooled for 10 minutes and then walked away in the middle of the debate. And it wouldn't have mattered. It just wouldn't have mattered what he said. Trump could have just started babbling incoherently. He could have just started speaking in Chinese, or he could have been speaking in tongues. And I don't think he would have lost any voters. I think Trump, he famously said, I could kill a person on Fifth Avenue and not lose any voters. And this seems to be the case. In fact, I think you probably could kill a bunch of people. There could be a video out of Trump just murdering babies, and people just wouldn't care. They'd be like, I don't care. I just don't care. I'm a Trump supporter. It's like a cult following. And, Trump could murder a bunch of babies and still all the red states would be red, all the blue states would be blue, and they just wouldn't make a difference. It just wouldn't make any difference. In the 2016 election, people had this crazy ideas about, well, Hillary, secretly, has done all these terrible things with Benghazi, and she's responsible for the deaths and for the people in Benghazi, even though that was proven to be not the case. She had no responsibility for that. After 12 hearings, she was found guiltless. But, the people believed it. And then there's the email scandal. And Trump made a big deal about that. And so a lot of people said, okay, Hillary is terrible, right? But I always suspected that they really didn't care about the email scandals. They really didn't care about the Benghazi. They had already made up their mind ahead of time about Hillary because she was blue. That's it. Hillary could be a Republican. She could have just been a Republican. And she could have had the same exact problems. Like, she could have had the Benghazi hearing, she could have had the email scandal, and she would have won because she was Republican. Republicans would just vote for her. It just doesn't matter what people do or what people say anymore. It's like a cult. Like, Trump supporters, it's like they have fallen into a cult. And it just doesn't matter what they say. This really, really bothers me. Because I always believed, and maybe I believe this kind of naively, I always believed that people came out and they made arguments. And they argued with facts, and they argued with evidence, and they argued with reason. And that people were persuadable by these things. They're persuadable by things that people said. And it seems like we're entering this stage in our history where we are post-argument. We are post-evidence, where evidence, reason just doesn't matter. You see all these movies where people make these impassioned speeches, and people are swayed by these speeches. They're like, "Oh wow, I didn't think of that." Yeah, and they get excited by an argument that a character is making. This doesn't. This is over. I oftentimes I think of like Scrooge. Like I think of Christmas Carol. Where you have this terrible, greedy person who is convinced after a night of seeing all these ghosts that what he believes is wrong. And he wakes up and he has an epiphany. And this is what's missing, I think, in today's world is we don't have epiphanies anymore. We don't have these moments where people see the light and they go, "Oh, now I realize I was wrong." That doesn't seem to happen. Or at least it doesn't happen enough. Because I know there's been a lot of Republicans that came out and said, I voted for Trump and I changed my mind. Okay, but that seems to be the extreme minority of people who are capable of being swayed by evidence, who are capable of being swayed by reasons, who are capable of even caring about education. And so why does this really bother me? It bothers me. I worry about the future of this country because I was a history major in college. When I went to graduate school, I graduated with my bachelor's in English, but then I pursued history because I love history and because I feel like history can teach us so much about humanity and about ourselves and about the world we live in. And history is our story. It tells us how did we get here? How did we get to this place in time? So I've always felt that history is really important. And I see that we are entering a stage in American history where we're basically, it's like we're driving off a cliff. And this has happened a lot. This has happened in ancient Greece, it happened in Rome, and it happened in Germany. It also happened in other parts of the world. It happened in China. It happened in Arabia. You had, in ancient, going back to Greece, you had this age of democracy where people made arguments based on reason and logic and, scientific worldview and, led by these great thinkers like Pythagoras and Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. And then you had a civil war. You had the Peloponnesian War, which lasted for 27 years. And at the end of it, you had an uneducated, militant city-state take over Greece, and that was the state of Sparta. Took over Athens, and they got rid of democracy. They got rid of the debates, and the people that took over were the people that they had the biggest military. These were not educated people, and then they got taken over by Alexander the Great, who basically turned Greece into an empire, into a monarchy, beholden to one man, Alexander. Rome, the same thing happened in Rome. Rome had this great republic with a room full of senators, and they tried to hold on to that democracy, but they were sort of fell in love with this charismatic leader, this charismatic military leader who was Julius Caesar. And they tried to stop him. They saw what was happening, and they didn't want to lose their republic. So they got up and they murdered him. They stabbed 60 senators, stabbed Julius Caesar on the Senate floor. They didn't need 60 stab wounds, but they did it because it was a vote. They voted with their knives. They voted in blood because they were trying to preserve the republic. But again, what happened? Civil war, and then that was the end of the republic, and that was the end of the democratic system that existed in Rome. Same thing happened in a similar way happened in the Middle East. You had this golden age of Islamic um, discovery, where you had the Sufis who sought scientific understanding, philosophical understanding. They embraced knowledge, they embraced education. They had millions of books in their libraries, whereas in Europe they had 100,000 books in their libraries. At that time, Muslims were more advanced, more enlightened, more educated. And this is why they built great cities, and they built a great empire. And they built things that Europeans couldn't manufacture. And what happened to that civilization? It collapsed because it got taken over by religious fanatics who said, you don't need all this knowledge, you don't need all this education. All you need is the Quran. Follow the Quran, follow Allah. And that was the end of the Islamic greatness. And it ended in 1200, around 1200 AD. And that was for 800 years. That's basically, we haven't seen a resurgence of the prior greatness that Islam had. It was over because of religious fanaticism. And you see these two things coming together. You see religious fanaticism, a move away from science, and a move away from education. And every time that happens, that is the collapse of that civilization. You see it in Germany, right? What did you have in Germany? Germany, before the Nazis took over, was one of the intellectual hubs of the world. Germany had these great, big libraries, and they had these great universities, and they had a lot of intellectuals, and they read a lot of books. Germans were great lovers of books and great lovers of knowledge. And what happened to Germany? They started following a charismatic but very uneducated guy who had some crazy ideas named Adolf Hitler. And he destroyed that country. I mean, we have seen a resurgence, luckily, of Germany's come back. Unfortunately, they're doing good now. But for, about, 30, 40 years, they were not doing well. And I'm thinking about the people who maybe voted for Hitler, who put Hitler into power. They never saw the Germany come back. They probably saw their country in ruins. And that seems to be where we're headed with Donald Trump. I don't think it's hyperbolic to suggest that voting for Donald Trump is literally will lead to the end of our democracy. This is not an extreme thing to say. Because if you have a leader who has done all of these things, he has lied, he has cheated, he has threatened to disenfranchise people, he's a racist, he doesn't seem to care about the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans. He doesn't seem to care about any of this. All he cares about is helping the rich get richer. When you have a majority of Americans that they're fine with that. They're fine with a guy like this. Then you think, what does a Trump-like person need to do to lose supporters? Even if Trump loses this election, okay, which is a possibility, Joe Biden might still win, but even if Trump loses this election, there's a very strong possibility that another Trump-like candidate might come along, and that people are going to vote for him because they're not going to care about anything that he does or says. They're not going to care if he tries to seize power. They're not going to care if he lies to them. They're going to embrace all of the. See, Donald Trump has set a dangerous precedent for future leaders, for future presidents, especially if he wins again. If he loses, then people might say, wait a minute, I can't act like Trump. Because that's a good sign not to be like Trump. But if he wins, that means that other presidents can push it even further. Other leaders can say, you know what, Trump didn't go far enough. I can take this to the more extreme point, to the point where I just declare myself king of America or president for life. Because, and this has happened so many times in history, again and again and again and again, countries have lost their democracies. And if you're out there and if you're a Trump supporter, you're a Republican, you're listening to this, I cannot stress this enough. I beg you, learn some history, because these things just keep repeating themselves. I feel like, when I see what's going on as a history major, it's like watching children playing in traffic. When I see people voting for Trump, it's like I'm watching children playing in traffic. And I know I'm the adult, and I know what's going to happen. I know that one of these kids is going to get hit by a car and die. I know it. And you try to tell them, listen, I know this, but it falls on deaf ears. You talk about freedom, right? You say, well, I want my freedom to have my guns. You don't have any freedom in a fascist state, okay? You don't have any freedom in a country that basically lifts up its president like a cult leader and lets the president do whatever he wants. If tomorrow, Trump decides, hey, you know what? I'm going to take away all your guns. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to appeal to the Congress when the Congress does anything he says? Are you going to appeal to the Supreme Court when all the Supreme Court nominees are basically appointed by him and they all do whatever he says? We have seen time and time again Republicans disagree with Trump, dislike Trump, what he does, but then follow him anyway. Trump has attacked and criticized so many of his congressmen, so many of the people that support him. And eventually they come around to whatever he wants to do. So if he just decides, you know what, I'm going to take away your guns, what are you going to do? Who are you going to appeal to? Are you going to get another person to be the president? Are you going to impeach him? Well, you can't, because apparently it doesn't matter if he gets impeached, because the Congress won't remove him. There's nothing you can do to a person like this who feels he is above the law. There's nothing you can do. So if you care about your guns, if you care about your religious freedom, if you care about any freedoms, if you care about not having big government, you don't want big government, there's no bigger government than a fascist state. That's the biggest government there is a fascist state. So if you care about your guns and your freedom and your individuality, Trump is the guy that's going to take that away from you. You want to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and, do whatever you want with your business, polluting rivers and stuff. You want to not pay taxes. If tomorrow Trump says, you know what, you guys have to pay more taxes, and all the taxes are going to go to me because I want to build a 50-foot statue of myself. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do when you have a fascist leader? You're going to have to pay your taxes to build him a 50-foot statue. This might sound crazy, but it's happened so many times, countless times in history. Greece, Rome, China, the Middle East, Germany, Italy, France, England. This has happened everywhere. And it's happening around the world in different countries. You have these fascistic-like leaders, these strongman leaders today, are alive today in the Middle East, in Russia. Putin is like that, just decides arbitrarily, I'm gonna be president for the next 35 years. His running mates get poisoned and almost die because you know he doesn't want any his power to be contested. You have the people in North Korea who are basically in a fascist state. They have no freedoms. They can't say anything bad about their leader. If they say anything bad about their leader, they get sent to prison. In China, you can't say anything bad about the president of China. Winnie the Pooh is banned in China because some journalist compared the president to Winnie the Pooh. Okay? This is a fascist state. This is a state where, you don't have freedom. So if you care about freedom, and I know Republicans do, they're always about rugged individualism. We're all about freedom. You care about freedom, you do not vote for someone who says, maybe I'll run for a third term. Maybe I'll contest the election results. I'm going to find a way to put my political rivals in prison, right? He tried to put Hillary in prison, and he even talked about finding a way to put Biden in prison. This is a dangerous, dangerous precedent. And the last thing that worries me is that, okay, we had these situations in these other countries where you had the rise of fascism and then it collapsed, right? In Germany and Italy, in Greece and Rome. But in this time in human history, the rise of fascism in America would endanger the whole earth. It would endanger humanity. And this is what's really keeping me up at night. This is what's really worrying me. Because the United States is the most powerful country that has ever existed. It's possibly the wealthiest country that has ever existed. And it has technology that was unprecedented in the past. So with Rome, you could see the collapse of Rome. You could go maybe a couple hundred years, maybe 1,000 years, things slowly get back to normal, right? In Germany, things got back to normal very quickly because you had the Allied powers helping to rebuild it. Because nobody wanted a collapsed state in the center of Europe. That wouldn't happen with the United States. Because the United States is so big and so powerful that nobody would be able to contest us. Nobody would be able to fight us and free us from a fascist leader. If we have a fascist leader in the United States, that fascist leader is always going to be here. Unless we have a violent revolution, which would cost millions of lives. And even then, I don't think we'd be able to get rid of it. I think a fascist leader in the United States, unlike other countries, would never go away. I think it would transform America forever. And what's worse than that is that it could quite literally lead to the end of the human race as we know it. Again, this might sound really hyperbolic, but it isn't. For two reasons. One, we have climate change. Now that's a long-term thing. Imagine you get Trump in there and he's going to say, you know what, I'm going to strip away EPA regulations, even more than he has. I'm going to continue to do more burning of coal, more burning of fossil fuels. I'm going to, side with the oil companies, try to resist the energy companies. I'm going to not try to abide by the Paris Accord. And what's going to happen? We're going to have a future where we're going to have flooding in major cities. This might not be something we see in our lifetimes, but we're going to have flooding in major cities. We're going to have the loss of a lot of land. A lot of homes are going to be destroyed. A lot of properties and businesses are going to be destroyed. which is going to lead to economic collapse. And that economic collapse is going to last for a long time as people have to, look for new jobs, look for new homes, look for new businesses, migrate into the interior, into higher grounds, areas that are not flooded. America won't be the same, especially when this is going to happen globally. So it's going to be a global problem. And then what's even more scary is that if the CO2 levels get beyond a certain point, it's going to be difficult for us to breathe. It's going to be difficult for us to think. When the CO2 levels get high enough, it becomes difficult to think, which is going to be even worse than the state we're in now, where no one seems to care very much about intellectual pursuits. Imagine if you have trouble thinking because it's too hot and there's not enough oxygen getting into your lungs and you're breathing in too much CO2. This is a scary world that we're going to be leaving our children and our grandchildren. It's a scary world I worry about. Okay? That's one possibility. Now, I don't think that if tomorrow we stop all fossil fuel production, which is impossible, even if we do, scientists say we're still going to have a problem. We're still going to have global flooding. We're still going to have dangerous CO2 levels. So I think that our only solution is that we're going to have to invest in new technologies. We're going to have to invest in science. We're going to have to pursue science. Really, really embrace it so that we can possibly find a technological way to artificially fix the climate or maybe just suck the CO2 out of the air. We're going to have to find some solution to solve this problem. And it's not going to be through religion. It's not going to be through prayer. It's not going to be through rugged individualism. The problem is going to be solved by pursuing science, by pursuing education. And these are things that Trump supporters oppose. If you look at the election map, go look at the election map right now. You see everywhere where there is a major city or major university, any part of the country that has a higher rate of education, all these states are blue. They're not red, they're blue. The people that are voting for Trump they're not the college-educated people. They're not the people that live in cities where scientific discoveries are being made. Scientific American who has taken a neutral stance in politics for the past 100 years, more than 100 years, decided they're going to support Biden because they're worried. They're worried about the future. When you have a president that says, what does science know about the virus or about climate change? We're reverting back to a state of ignorance at the worst possible time because science has taken us to this point. Science has pushed us into this dangerous tipping point where we have to contend with fossil fuels and nuclear power. And the only way out of that is with better science. You can't combat bad science with ignorance. You can only combat it with better knowledge and better understanding. But here is the second scenario that worries me. The guy in charge of the Nuclear Commission is, he was the governor of Texas. I forgot his name. You look it up. The governor of Texas, who doesn't have a degree in physics or nuclear anything like his predecessors. He was put there by Trump. And the guy doesn't know anything. He doesn't know anything about nuclear power or nuclear weapons, for that matter. Now, what people don't understand about nuclear weapons is how close we have come to World War III. Okay? Just to give you one example. And these are scary stories, and they're all true. there was a Russian guy whose job it was to look at the radar screen to see if nuclear missiles are coming his way toward Russia. And if he saw nuclear missiles coming from America, his job was to push the button and launch nuclear missiles at the US. And one day, he looked at the screen and he saw nuclear missiles coming from the US. But he did not push the button. He sort of intuitively thought to himself, this doesn't make sense. Why is America just deciding to launch nuclear missiles at us? So he didn't push the button, but he could have. Another person with less intuition, with less common sense, could have pushed the button. And that would have been the end of the world. That would have literally been the end of the world. Now imagine if the roles are flipped. Imagine the roles are flipped, and instead of having a Russian guy who had a lot of intuition, you have someone like Trump. And the cronies that Trump has placed to be in charge of these things, who don't know anything, who don't have any common sense. And they see nuclear missiles coming from Russia. Now, what do? They launch their missiles, right? They launch our missiles. Trump says, oh, shit. If they're launching nukes at us, we better launch nukes at them. So he launches our nukes. And now Russia, once they start seeing nukes coming, once they confirm that, the nukes are coming, maybe a few nukes will even go off, and then they'll really know, hey, we're being attacked. They're going to launch their nukes at us. And that's going to be it. It's over, folks. That's the end of the world right there. I know this is going back to the 80s. It's like, oh, people were thinking about nuclear weapons for a while. But this is still a big risk. And that's a more immediate threat to us, nuclear war. And you don't want someone in the Oval Office who is an egomaniac and who doesn't care that people are going to die, as he apparently has shown a total disregard for people's lives. And so this is what really scares me. And it's not even the fact that Trump might win again. It's not even the fact that that we might have another, crazy person like this. It's the fact that Americans are voting for this guy. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with Americans? I don't understand this. I mean, I used to think, okay, I guess America's racist. I guess America's ignorant. I guess America wasn't what I thought. I thought that the majority of people were decent. I thought the majority of people in this country would care. Even about one thing. Even just take the pussy grabbing thing, right? We know for a fact that he sexually assaults women. Like, we know this. And people don't care. Like, that's okay. It's okay to sexually assault women. That's fine. That's fine with us. It's even fine for some women. Some women they say it's okay. I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna vote for a guy who sexually assaults women. That doesn't bother me. Because what bothers me is money and pocketbook. And even if you believe, and we could get into the economics, which is a whole other thing. I don't want to bring that up because I actually do think Joe Biden is better for the economy than Bush. But put that aside for a second. The fact that people can say, I don't care if he's a racist. I don't care if, he tells the Proud Boys, stand by. I don't care if he says about the KKK, they're good people on both sides. I don't care about that. All I care about is I get extra money in my pocket. And if I get extra money in my pocket, I don't care what happens to other people. And the fact that half of Americans are fine with it, the fact that half of Americans are like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I make money. I don't care. Like my brother. I don't care. I make more money now. I do not care about any other issue because I make more money, period. CNN ran a poll. It said, it showed what people were most concerned with. Democrats most concerned about racial inequality. What do Republicans most care about? The economy. It's their money. Democrats care about other people. Republicans care about their money. That's it. Fuck other people. I want my money. So what that tells me is that half of Americans, and maybe this is going to make me lose followers or readers or whatever, I don't care. You're not a good person. If you know all this about Trump and you just don't care, you're not a good person. I'm sorry. You're just not. You're just a selfish piece of shit. And I don't know. I don't know what to think of that. I guess it's disillusioning for me because I'm 45 and all my life I genuinely believed that people were good, that people were better than this. I based it on the books I read, the movies I watched, right? You see a movie, you see the good guy doing the good thing, right? We root for heroes. We root for good people. And I guess half the country just doesn't care. They don't care about what's right and wrong, what's good or bad. They don't have a conscience. They don't have a moral guide. All they care about is give me my money. That's it. Fuck the rest of you. That seems to be the attitude of half of the people who live in this country. Maybe it's half the people who live in the world. I don't know. And it's heartbreaking. And it's going to lead to some very bad things. And that's why, I made this video. I'm sure nobody's watching. I don't really have much of a YouTube platform, so I'm sure nobody's watching me vent right now. But, that's how I'm feeling. And I'm still praying for a Biden victory. But even if Biden wins, it really, really, I'm really, really worried about the future of this country. I really am. So, anyway, I think I'll probably go back, look at the results. If you've watched this video, thanks for watching. If nobody watches, this is okay. I probably would just talk to a wall, just to get it out of my system if I had to. So yeah, that's my thoughts. And if you have any comments about it, and if you're a troll, if you're just going to leave a comment and say, oh, Trump this and Trump that, fuck you. I don't care. I really don't care what you think. Because I don't care what selfish people think. I just don't. My goal in life is to try to be a decent human being. Like that's what I'm going to live. I live my life trying to be a decent person. So if someone can point to me and say, hey, you know what, Nick, you're not being a good person, right? You did that thing and that wasn't right. That's what I'm going to care about. But if you're going to be like, oh, Trump, yeah, Trump is great, you're just a crybaby because you lost, blah, 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 I just don't care. Don't waste your time. So that's it. Signing off. Let's pray that we have some better results, at least. Because I think a future with Biden will, um, at the very least, will keep us from doomsday a little longer. So, thanks for watching.